A black SUV was spinning out of control on Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, California. The tires screamed against the wet pavement as the vehicle crossed two lanes, clipped the guardrail, and flipped. It rolled once, then twice. Then it crashed through the metal barrier and tumbled down the rocky embankment toward the shoreline below. The sound of metal tearing apart echoed across the empty stretch of road. Glass exploded in every direction. The SUV came to a stop upside down, wedged between two large rocks about 40 feet below the highway. Steam hissed from the crumpled hood. Fuel began leaking from the undercarriage, pooling on the wet rocks beneath the vehicle. Inside that destroyed SUV was Sungmin Park, 31 years old, CEO of the Park conglomerate, a multi-million-dollar Korean empire that controlled luxury real estate developments, five-star hotel chains, and private security firms across the entire West Coast. His driver, a man named Mr. Yu who had been with the family for 15 years, was slumped over the steering wheel. He was not breathing. Sungmin was pinned behind the deployed airbag in the back seat. Blood ran from a deep gash across his right temple. His eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow and getting weaker by the second. No other cars stopped. The stretch of PCH between Malibu and Santa Monica could be empty late at night, and tonight it was. No headlights, no sirens, just the sound of the ocean below and the hissing of a vehicle that was minutes away from catching fire. Regina Cole was driving home. She was 26 years old, exhausted, and running on her third cup of gas station coffee. She had just finished a double shift at a veterinary emergency clinic in Santa Monica. 14 hours on her feet, 3 emergency surgeries, 1 dog that did not make it, which she was still trying not to think about. Her scrubs had dried blood on them. Her locks were pulled up in a messy bun. Her 2016 Honda Civic, which had a dent in the passenger door and a check engine light that had been on for 4 months, rattled along the highway as she headed home to Culver City. She almost did not see the wreck. But she did. She saw the broken guardrail first. Then she saw the faint glow of the SUV's one remaining headlight shining up from the embankment below. She pulled over immediately. She got out of her car and looked down the slope. She could see the overturned vehicle. She could see the fuel glistening on the rocks. She could smell it from where she stood. Regina grabbed the first aid kit she always kept in her trunk. She had carried one since she was 22, ever since she watched a cyclist get hit by a car outside her apartment and could do nothing but stand there and wait for the ambulance. She swore she would never be that helpless again. She climbed down the embankment in the dark. The rocks were wet and jagged. Her scrubs tore at the knee. She slipped twice and caught herself on a patch of rough brush that cut her palms open. She kept going. When she reached the SUV, the fuel smell was overwhelming. She could hear the engine ticking, cooling, but the leak was active and getting worse. She looked through the shattered rear window and saw Sungmin. He was hanging sideways in his seatbelt, unconscious, blood covering the right side of his face. She checked the driver first. No pulse. She closed her eyes for 1 second, then moved to the rear door. It was jammed. The frame of the SUV was bent inward from the roll. She pulled the tire iron she had brought from her trunk and wedged it into the gap between the door and the frame. She pulled with everything she had. The door groaned and popped open about 2 feet, enough for her to reach inside. She cut his seatbelt with a small utility knife from her first aid kit. He was heavy, at least 6'1", solid build and completely dead weight. She grabbed him under the arms and pulled. It took her 3 attempts. Her back screamed. Her torn palms bled against his suit jacket, but she got him out. She dragged him across the gravel and wet grass, away from the vehicle. 20 feet, then 30. She did not stop until she could no longer smell the fuel. She laid him down on a patch of flat ground, tilted his head back to clear his airway, and pressed her jacket against the gash on his temple to slow the bleeding. His pulse was weak and thready under her fingers, but it was there. She talked to him even though he could not hear her. She said, "Stay with me. You are not dying out here tonight, not on my shift." Behind her, the SUV caught fire. The fuel ignited with a low whoosh, and within seconds the entire vehicle was engulfed. The heat reached her from 30 feet away. If she had been even 2 minutes slower, he would have burned alive. She stayed with him for 11 minutes. She monitored his breathing. She kept pressure on his wound. She checked his pupils with the flashlight on her phone. She did everything she knew how to do, which was a lot. Because when you work in emergency veterinary medicine, you learn triage, you learn trauma response, and you learn how to stay calm when everything around you is falling apart. Then she heard the sirens, faint at first, then louder. She saw the red and blue lights flickering along the highway above. She checked his pulse one more time. It was stronger now, steadier. He was going to make it. And then Regina did something that would change the course of both of their lives. She stood up, climbed back up the embankment, got into her car, and drove away. She left her jacket pressed against his wound. She left no name, no phone number, no identification of any kind. She did not wait for the paramedics. She did not wave them down. She simply left. The reason was not complicated. Regina Cole had been invisible her entire life, and she had learned to survive that way. She was a first-generation college graduate, raised by her grandmother Estelle in Inglewood after her mother walked out when Regina was 9 years old. She worked 2 jobs. She had $87,000 in student debt. She was one emergency away from financial disaster at any given moment. The last thing she needed was to be involved in a police investigation, a news cycle, or the complicated world of whoever that man in the expensive suit was. She did what she always did. She helped, and then she disappeared. What she did not know was that Sung-min Park's hand had briefly closed around her wrist while she was pressing the jacket to his head. He was not conscious, but somewhere in the space between darkness and awareness, he felt her there. He felt someone holding on to him, and that sensation would be the first thing he remembered when he woke up. Sung-min woke up 14 hours later in a private suite at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. His head was wrapped in bandages. His ribs were bruised. His right shoulder was dislocated and had been reset while he was unconscious. 3 doctors stood at the foot of his bed. His head of security, a former Korean Special Forces operative named Min-ho, stood by the door with his arms crossed. His younger sister, Hana Park, sat in the chair next to him, her eyes red from crying but her posture sharp and composed. The first thing Sung-min said when he opened his eyes was not about the crash. It was not about the pain. It was not about who had tried to kill him. He said, "Who pulled me out?" Nobody knew. The paramedics reported that when they arrived at the scene, Sung-min was lying on a patch of grass 20 feet from the burning SUV. A woman's jacket was pressed against his head wound. No one else was present. No witnesses on the highway. No 911 call from a personal phone. Someone had called from a burner or a payphone, and the recording only captured a woman's voice saying the location and the words, "Someone is hurt," before the line went dead. The jacket was dark green, plain, size small. The pockets contained a hair tie and a half-empty pack of peppermint gum. No wallet, no ID, no name. Min-ho told Sung-min they would investigate. Hana told him to focus on recovering. The doctors told him he was lucky to be alive. Sung-min held the jacket in his hands. He could smell cocoa butter and antiseptic on the fabric. He ran his thumb across the collar where the stitching was starting to come loose. A jacket that had been worn hundreds of times, washed until the color faded, kept because it still worked. He made a decision, right there in that hospital bed. He was going to find her. 3 days after the crash, Sung-min checked himself out of Cedars-Sinai against medical advice. The doctors told him he needed at least another week of observation. He thanked them politely and walked out with stitches still fresh across his temple and his right arm in a sling. He went directly to the Park conglomerate headquarters on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills. The building was 40 stories of glass and steel, the crown jewel of the Park family's American operations. He took the private elevator to the top floor, walked into the main conference room, and called a meeting. But this meeting had nothing to do with business. Sung-min sat at the head of the table with the green jacket laid out in front of him. Min-ho stood to his right. 2 members of the security team's intelligence division sat across from them with laptops open. Sung-min's instructions were simple. Find the woman who saved his life. Use every resource available. Traffic cameras along Pacific Coast Highway, toll booth records, satellite imagery, gas station surveillance footage from every station within a 10-mile radius of the crash site. Check every hospital and clinic in the area for a woman matching the general description who might have come in with cuts on her hands. Min-ho, who had served with the Korean military's elite units and had spent 12 years protecting the Park family, looked at Sung-min and said, "Sir, with respect, we have more pressing matters. Someone sabotaged your vehicle. Your driver is dead. We need to find who is responsible before they try again." Sung-min did not look away from the jacket. He said, "You can do both." That was the end of the discussion. Meanwhile, 23 miles away in Culver City, Regina Cole was living her life like nothing had happened. She went to work the next morning. She clocked in at the veterinary emergency clinic at 7 a.m. She treated a golden retriever with a bowel obstruction, a cat with kidney failure, and a parrot that had somehow swallowed a button battery. She ate lunch alone in the break room, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple, because her bank account had $340 in it and payday was not until Friday. She went home to her one-bedroom apartment, which was small and old but clean. She had decorated it with plants she propagated herself, thrift store frames with prints she liked, and a bookshelf made of cinder blocks and wooden planks. Her cat, Biscuit, a fat orange tabby she had adopted from the clinic 3 years ago, greeted her at the door by meowing once and then walking away. She showered. She looked at the cuts on her palms, which were healing but still raw. She thought about the man on the embankment. She wondered if he had survived. She had not checked the news. She did not want to know his name or his story or anything about him. That was how she protected herself. She helped, and then she moved on. Her best friend, Joel, did not let her move on. Joel Carter was 27, loud, opinionated, and fiercely loyal. She worked as a bartender at a cocktail lounge in West Hollywood and had the kind of personality that filled every room she walked into. She was also the only person on Earth who knew what Regina had done that night because Regina had called her from the car on the way home, shaking and crying, and told her everything. Joel showed up at Regina's apartment that evening with Thai food and a bottle of wine. She sat on Regina's couch, fed Biscuit a piece of chicken, and said, "Gina, I need you to hear me when I say this. That car you pulled that man out of was a Maybach. A Maybach. Do you know how much those cost?" Regina said she did not care. Joel said, "You saved a rich man's life and you just walked away. Girl, that was your lottery ticket, and you crumpled it up and threw it out the window." Regina shook her head. She said, "I am not my mother." That sentence carried the weight of 16 years of pain. Regina's mother, Denise, had spent her entire adult life chasing men with money. She moved from relationship to relationship, city to city, always looking for someone who could fund the lifestyle she thought she deserved. She left Regina with Estelle when Regina was 9 and never came back in any meaningful way. A phone call on birthdays, a text at Christmas, nothing real. Regina had decided when she was 15 years old that she would never, ever depend on anyone else for anything. Especially not a man, especially not a powerful one. Joel understood. She did not push further, but she said, "All I am saying is you did something incredible, and nobody even knows." Regina said, "Good." Back at the park conglomerate, Min-ho's team was making progress. They pulled traffic camera footage from 3 different angles along Pacific Coast Highway. The quality was degraded by the rain, but they found what they were looking for. A dented 2016 Honda Civic, dark-colored, pulling over on the shoulder approximately 200 yards from the crash site at the time of the incident. The car was there for roughly 14 minutes before it pulled away. They enhanced the footage. The license plate was partially obscured by rain and mud, but the tech team was able to extract a partial plate number. 4 characters out of 7. They cross-referenced it with the California DMV database. The search returned 11 possible matches. Min-ho narrowed it down based on the make, model, and color of the vehicle. 3 matches remained. 3 Honda Civics, registered to 3 different people in the greater Los Angeles area. While Min-ho hunted for the mystery woman, Hana Park was hunting for something else entirely. Hana was 27, 2 years younger than Sung-min. She had graduated from Seoul National University's law program and had spent the last 3 years working in the park conglomerate's legal division. She was brilliant, relentless, and had no patience for anything that wasted her time. When she flew in from Seoul and saw her brother in that hospital bed, she did not cry in front of him. She cried in the hospital bathroom for 5 minutes, fixed her makeup, and came back out ready to destroy whoever had done this. She did not care about the mystery woman. She cared about the crash. She had already reviewed the preliminary report from the mechanics who examined the wreckage. The brake lines had been cut. The steering column had been tampered with. This was not an accident. Someone had tried to murder her brother. Hana started her own investigation. She pulled the internal security logs for every person who had access to Sung Min's vehicle fleet. She reviewed employee records. She checked for anyone who had recently been hired, fired, or had shown unusual behavior. And she started looking at Victor Hale. Victor Hale was 53 years old, based in San Francisco, and ran Hale Development Group, one of the largest commercial real estate firms on the West Coast. He had been competing with the park conglomerate for years over prime development properties in Los Angeles, San Diego, and Scottsdale. The competition was fierce, but had always remained professional. Until recently. 6 months before the crash, Victor lost a $400 million bid for a waterfront property in Marina del Rey to the park conglomerate. It was the third major deal he had lost to Sung Min in 2 years. Industry sources said he was furious. His investors were losing confidence. His company's stock was declining. Hana did not believe in coincidences. She believed in motives, and Victor Hale had one. It took Minho's team 9 days to find her. They checked the first 2 Honda Civics on the list. The first belonged to a 64-year-old retired teacher in Pasadena. The second belonged to a college student in Long Beach who had been out of the country that week. The third was registered to an address in Culver City. Minho sent a team to do a drive-by. They found the dented Honda Civic parked in the lot of a veterinary emergency clinic in Santa Monica. The dent pattern matched the traffic camera footage. The partial plate matched. They did not approach. They watched. They waited. At 6:47 p.m., a young black woman walked out of the clinic's back entrance. She was wearing scrubs. Her locks were pulled up. She had a tired expression and a messenger bag slung over one shoulder. She walked to the Honda Civic, unlocked it with a key because the remote had stopped working months ago, and drove away. Minho's team photographed her. They followed her at a distance to her apartment in Culver City. They ran her plate. They had a name within the hour. Regina Cole, 26, veterinary technician, no criminal record, no social media presence to speak of. Graduated from Cal State LA with a degree in animal science. Currently employed at Pacific Coast Veterinary Emergency in Santa Monica. Annual income approximately $38,000 before taxes. Minho brought the file to Sung Min that night. He laid the photograph on Sung Min's desk in the home office of the Bel Air estate. Sung Min picked it up. He stared at the photo for a long time. Regina was walking across the parking lot, looking at the ground, her face partially lit by the street lamp above her. She looked exhausted. She looked like someone who had been carrying weight for a long time and had stopped expecting anyone to help her carry it. This was the woman who had dragged him out of a burning vehicle, who had kept pressure on his wound, who had stayed with him for 11 minutes and then vanished like she had never been there at all. Minho asked how Sung Min wanted to proceed. He offered to send a representative. He offered to have someone make contact discreetly. Sung Min said, "I will go myself." The next afternoon, a black sedan pulled up outside the veterinary clinic in Santa Monica. Sung Min stepped out. He was wearing a dark blue suit. The stitches on his temple were still visible. His arm was no longer in the sling, but he moved it carefully. 2 security guards stayed in the car. He walked into the clinic. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and dog shampoo. A woman behind the front desk looked up and immediately straightened in her chair because Sung Min Park had the kind of presence that made people sit up without knowing why. He said he had an injured dog. He needed examined. The receptionist asked where the dog was. He did not have a dog. Before he could figure out how to handle that problem, the door behind the front desk opened and Regina walked out. She had a clipboard in one hand and a pen behind her ear. She said, "Room 2 is ready. Where is the animal?" Then she looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the stitches first. The cut across his right temple, stitched neatly but still red and raised. She saw the way he held his right shoulder, slightly stiff, slightly guarded. She saw his face, and something about it was familiar even though she had never seen him conscious before. Her stomach dropped. Sung Min looked at her. He saw the recognition move across her face. He saw her hands tighten on the clipboard. He said, "You left before I could thank you." Regina's mouth went dry. She glanced at the receptionist, who was watching with wide eyes. She looked back at Sungmin. She said, "You don't need to thank me. I'm glad you're okay." She turned to walk back behind the counter. Sungmin was not used to people walking away from him. In his world, people came to him. They waited for him. They sought his attention, his approval, his favor. This woman had saved his life, and she was walking away from him for the second time. He said, "I owe you my life. I would like to repay that." Regina stopped walking but did not turn around. She said, "I didn't do it for payment." Then she went through the door and disappeared into the back of the clinic. Sungmin stood in the waiting room for a moment. A pug in the lap of an elderly woman on the bench was staring at him. He looked at the pug. The pug looked at him. Neither of them blinked. He placed his business card on the front counter and left. That evening, Joel stopped by the clinic to bring Regina dinner. She noticed the business card sitting untouched on the counter. She picked it up, read the name, and pulled out her phone. She Googled Sungmin Park, and the results loaded in less than a second. Joel's jaw dropped. She scrolled through article after article. Forbes profiles, Business Insider features, a Bloomberg piece titled "The Young King of West Coast Real Estate." Photos of Sungmin at galas, at ribbon-cutting ceremonies, at press conferences. Net worth estimated at $4.2 billion. Head of the park conglomerate. Youngest CEO in the family's 100-year history. Joel turned the phone's screen toward Regina, who had just come out of the back with her bag. Joel said, "Girl, this is the man you saved." Regina looked at the screen. She read the headline. She saw the number. She said, "Okay." Joel said, "Okay, $4.2 billion, and you said okay. And you told him no." Regina picked up her bag and walked toward the door. She said, "I told him the truth." She did not take the business card. Joel took it for her, slipping it into her own purse because Joel was not the kind of person who threw away a billionaire's phone number. That night, Regina went home, fed Biscuit, and microwaved leftover rice for dinner. She sat on her couch and thought about the look on Sungmin's face when she walked away from him. He had not looked angry. He had looked confused, like she had handed him something he did not know how to hold. She went to bed at 11. She set her alarm for 6 a.m. She fell asleep within minutes because exhaustion does not negotiate. She woke up at 2 in the morning. Not because of the alarm, because of a sound. She lay still in the dark, listening. Biscuit, who usually slept at the foot of her bed, was standing in the bedroom doorway, his ears flat, his tail puffed. He was staring into the living room. Regina got up slowly. She walked into the living room and turned on the light. Nothing looked wrong at first, then she noticed. Biscuit's food bowl had been moved from its usual spot by the kitchen wall to the center of the kitchen floor. Her mail, which she had left in a stack on the counter, was spread out, opened, every envelope. And on her kitchen table, placed neatly in the center like someone had set it there with purpose, was a photograph. Regina picked it up with shaking hands. It was a photo of her, taken from above, from the hillside that overlooked the embankment on PCH. In the photo, she was kneeling over Sungmin's body, pressing her jacket to his head. The burning SUV was visible in the background. The photo was clear, well lit by the fire, and taken with a long-range lens. Someone had been on that hillside the night of the crash. Someone had watched the whole thing. They had watched her save him. They had watched her leave. And now they were in her apartment, and they wanted her to know it. Regina did not scream. She did not cry. She grabbed a kitchen knife from the drawer, checked every room in her apartment, checked the closets, checked behind the shower curtain, and then sat down on her couch with the knife in one hand and her phone in the other. She called the police. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. They checked the apartment. No sign of forced entry, no fingerprints on the photograph, no disturbance to the locks or windows. One officer suggested she might have left the mail open herself and forgotten. She did not argue with him because she knew he was not going to help her. They took a report and left. Regina sat on her couch for the rest of the night. She did not sleep. Biscuit sat in her lap, and she held him against her chest like a shield. At 5 a.m., she called Joel. Joel came over immediately. When Regina showed her the photograph, Joel went silent, which was something that almost never happened. She studied the image, the angle, the clarity, the fact that whoever took it had been positioned on the hillside above the crash site, watching everything unfold. Joel said, "Gina, this is not a random break-in. Whoever took this picture was there that night. They watched you save him, and now they want you to know that they know who you are." Regina said, "This is about him, isn't it? This is about whoever tried to kill him." Joel said, "Which is exactly why you need to call him." Regina resisted for another hour. She paced her apartment. She argued with herself. She argued with Joel. She said she did not want to get pulled into someone else's world. She said she had worked too hard to build her own life, small as it was, to let it get swallowed up by someone else's problems. Joel said, "Your life is already in this, Gina. Someone was inside your home. You can be independent and dead, or you can swallow your pride and make the call." At 6:30 a.m., Regina went into Joel's purse, pulled out the business card, and dialed the number. Sungmin answered on the first ring. His voice was alert, which told her he had not been sleeping either. She said, "Something happened. I think it's about you." 20 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up outside her apartment building. Minho stepped out first, followed by 3 members of the park security team. They swept her apartment in under 5 minutes. They photographed the kitchen table, the displaced food bowl, the opened mail. They bagged the photograph. Sungmin arrived 10 minutes after that. He walked into her small apartment, and it looked almost absurd. This man in his tailored clothes, standing in her living room next to her cinder block bookshelf and her thrift store couch. But he did not look out of place the way she expected him to. He looked focused. He looked at the photograph, and his expression went cold. He said, "This confirms it. The crash was arranged. Whoever did it had someone positioned on the hill to watch and confirm. That person saw you pull me out. Now they see you as a loose end." Regina said, "A loose end?" Sungmin said, "Someone who can connect the crash to the people who arranged it. A witness." Regina said, "I didn't witness anything. I just pulled you out of a car." Sungmin said, "They don't know what you saw, and people like this don't take chances." He told her she needed to come under his protection, immediately. She said no. He expected that. He did not push. Instead, he said, "Then let me ask you one question. Do you have anyone who can protect you? Security system, weapons training, anyone who would know if something happened to you before it was too late?" She had Joel. She had Biscuit. She had a kitchen knife. He let the silence do the work. That evening, Regina packed a duffel bag with clothes, her work scrubs, her laptop, and her cat. She got into the back of an armored SUV and was driven to the park estate in Bel Air. The estate was on 12 acres behind iron gates that required 3 separate security clearances to open. The grounds were immaculate. The main house was a modern architectural masterpiece with clean lines, natural stone, and walls of glass that overlooked the canyon below. There was a guest house, a pool house, a full security command center, and staff quarters that housed a team of 20. Regina was shown to a guest suite on the 2nd floor of the main house. The suite had a king-size bed, a sitting area, a private bathroom with a walk-in shower and a soaking tub, and a view of the canyon. The room was larger than her entire apartment. She set her duffel bag on the floor. She set Biscuit's carrier on the bed. She stood in the middle of the room and felt completely, overwhelmingly out of place. That first night, she could not sleep. At midnight, she went downstairs to find the kitchen. The house was quiet. The security team rotated outside on a schedule she could hear through the windows, soft footsteps on gravel every 20 minutes. She found the kitchen, a massive space with marble countertops and professional-grade appliances, and she found Sungmin sitting at the island counter. He was drinking tea and reading documents on a tablet. He was wearing a plain black t-shirt and gray sweatpants. It was the first time she had seen him in anything other than a suit, and he looked different. Younger. Less like the man on the Forbes cover and more like someone who could not sleep either. He looked up when she walked in. He said, "There is tea, and I think there is hot chocolate somewhere if you prefer that." She found the hot chocolate. She made herself a cup. She sat across from him at the island counter. They talked. It was not a big conversation at first. It was small. He asked her how long she had been a vet tech. She said 4 years. She told him she wanted to be a veterinarian, had wanted it since she was 12 years old when her grandmother took in a stray dog that had been hit by a car, and she watched the neighborhood vet save its life in a garage because they could not afford the animal hospital. He asked why she had not gone to vet school. She said money. Applications were expensive. Tuition was impossible. She had a stack of applications sitting on her desk at home, filled out, ready to go, and she could not afford the submission fees, let alone 4 years of graduate school. He asked about her family. She told him about Estelle, her grandmother, who still lived in the same house in Inglewood where she had raised Regina. She told him that Estelle was 71 years old, had arthritis in both hands, still cooked Sunday dinner every week, and was the strongest person Regina had ever known. She did not mention her mother. He did not ask. Then she asked him why he was awake. He said, "Because someone tried to kill me 10 days ago, and I don't know who. And the woman who saved my life ran away from me twice, and now she is sitting in my kitchen drinking hot chocolate." She almost smiled, almost. He told her about the pressure of running the conglomerate, not the glamorous parts, the real parts, the board meetings that lasted 9 hours, the constant travel, the weight of being responsible for thousands of employees and their families, the loneliness of being the person everyone looked to for decisions, but no one asked how he was doing. She asked him why he was so determined to find her. He said, "Because you saved my life and you wanted nothing for it, and I have never experienced that before. In my world, everything comes with a price. Everything is a transaction. You pulled me out of a fire and you did not even leave your name. I needed to understand why." She said, "Because you were dying and I was there. That is it. That is the whole reason." He looked at her for a long time after she said that, and something in his expression shifted, like a door opening that he did not know was closed. They talked until almost 3 in the morning. Then she said goodnight and went back to her room. She fell asleep within minutes, and for the first time since the break-in, she felt safe. The days at the Bel Air estate developed a rhythm. Regina refused to stop working. She told Sungmin that if she was going to be stuck in his world, she was going to keep living in hers. He arranged for an armored vehicle to take her to and from the veterinary clinic every day. 2 security guards were assigned to her at all times, positioned outside the clinic during her shifts and outside the estate at night. She hated it at first. She told Sungmin she felt like a prisoner with nicer furniture. He listened without arguing and then adjusted the arrangement. He told the guards to keep more distance. He told them to dress casually so they would not draw attention. He asked Regina what else he could do to make her comfortable. She said, "You could stop having people follow me." He said, "I cannot do that." She said, "Then stop asking what you can do." But she did not leave. Sungmin started driving her to work some mornings. Not personally driving, because Minho was always behind the wheel, but sitting in the back seat with her. He said it was because the route was on his way to the office. It was not. During those car rides, they talked. Every morning the conversations got a little longer, a little deeper. She learned that he read Korean poetry before bed, a habit his mother had given him before she passed away when he was 19. He learned that she sang under her breath when she was nervous, always the same song, a Stevie Wonder track her grandmother used to play on Sunday mornings. He asked her about her favorite cases at the clinic. She told him about the 3-legged pit bull she had treated last year who now lived with a retired firefighter in Pasadena. She told him about the parrot who said, "Help me," every time she took its temperature, which was hilarious until it did it in front of a client who almost called the police. He laughed. She realized she had never heard him laugh before. It changed his entire face. 2 weeks into her stay at the estate, Sungmin showed up at the veterinary clinic one afternoon. He was not there for a car ride. He was standing in the parking lot next to the armored SUV, holding a dog. The dog was a mess. Medium-sized, mixed breed, with matted fur, a broken front leg, and skin irritation covering half its body. It was trembling violently. Sungmin was holding it against his chest, and the dog was pressed into his suit jacket, which was now covered in dirt and fur. He said, "I found it near a construction site in Santa Monica, one of my hotel developments. It was under a dumpster." Regina looked at him. This man, this CEO of a billion-dollar empire, was standing in her clinic parking lot holding a trembling, filthy dog wrapped in what was clearly a very expensive jacket. Something in her chest shifted. She did not name it, but she felt it. She took the dog inside. She worked on it for 2 hours. She splinted the broken leg, cleaned and treated the skin condition, administered fluids and medication, and wrapped the dog in a warm blanket. By the time she was done, the dog had stopped trembling and was asleep on the exam table. Sung-min had waited the entire time. He was sitting in the waiting room, his suit jacket ruined, scrolling through emails on his phone but not actually reading any of them. When Regina came out, she said, "He is going to be okay. He needs rest and consistent care for the next few weeks." Sung-min said, "What is his name?" She said, "He does not have one. He is a stray." Sung-min thought about it and said, "Lucky." Regina looked at him with an expression that was somewhere between affection and disbelief. She said, "That is the most unoriginal name in the world." He said, "It is accurate." They kept Lucky. The dog went home to the Bel Air estate that night and was set up in a recovery area that Sung-min had his staff prepare within an hour. Within 3 days, Lucky was following Sung-min around the house. Within a week, Lucky was sleeping on Sung-min's bed, which Minho found deeply unprofessional and Hana found hilarious. One evening, about 3 weeks after Regina had moved into the estate, they were sitting on the terrace that overlooked the canyon. The sun had set. The city lights were spread out below them like a second sky. Lucky was asleep between their chairs. The conversation had gotten quiet, not uncomfortable, just still. The kind of quiet that only happens between two people who have stopped performing for each other. Sung-min reached over and tucked one of her locks behind her ear. His fingers brushed the side of her face. She did not pull away. She turned toward him slightly. Their faces were inches apart. His phone rang. It was Hana. The moment broke like glass. Sung-min answered the phone. His expression changed immediately. He stood up and walked to the edge of the terrace, speaking in rapid Korean. Regina watched him. His shoulders were tense. His free hand was clenched at his side. When he hung up, he turned to her and said, "Hana found something." Hana had traced a wire transfer from a shell company linked to Victor Hale to a private military contractor named Eric Soren. The transfer was made 2 weeks before the crash. Eric Soren was ex-military, 41 years old, with a history of private security work that bordered on mercenary activity. He had been in the Malibu area the night of the crash. His phone records placed him within half a mile of the PCH location at the time of the incident. Eric Soren was the man on the hillside. He was the one who had sabotaged the SUV. He was the one who had taken the photograph of Regina. And according to Minho's surveillance team, Eric Soren had not left Lowe's Angels. In fact, for the past 3 days, the same vehicle had been parked within sight of the veterinary clinic in Santa Monica. Watching, waiting. He was watching Regina. Everything changed after that night. Sung-min doubled the security around the estate and around the clinic. He wanted Regina to stop going to work entirely. She refused. They argued about it, their first real argument, and it was not pretty. She said, "You do not get to make decisions about my life. I have been taking care of myself since I was 9 years old. I am not going to stop now because some man with a camera is parked outside my job." He said, "This is not about independence. This is about staying alive." She said, "If I stop living my life because of fear, then they have already won." He looked at her and she could see it in his eyes, the thing he was not saying. He was afraid, not for himself, for her. And that fear was something he did not know how to handle because Sung-min Park had built his entire life around control, and this was something he could not control. She went to work the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. On Wednesday evening, she was leaving the clinic with her 2-guard detail. They walked to the armored SUV in the parking lot. She was tired. She was thinking about Lucky's follow-up treatment. She was thinking about whether there was any of the pasta that the estate's chef had made the night before left in the fridge. She was not thinking about the 2 vehicles that turned into the parking lot at the same time and boxed in the SUV from both sides. It happened fast. Both vehicles stopped, blocking the SUV's front and rear. 4 men got out. They moved with military precision. They disabled the security guards quickly, using tasers and physical force. The guards were trained, but they were outnumbered. One of the men smashed the SUV's rear window with a crowbar. Another spray-painted a message on the hood in large red letters, "Walk away or bleed." They did not touch Regina. They did not grab her or threaten her directly. They made her watch. Then they got back in their vehicles and drove away, the whole thing lasting less than 90 seconds. Regina was standing in the parking lot when it was over. Glass was in her hair from the shattered window. The security guards were on the ground, disoriented but conscious. The red paint on the SUV hood was dripping in the evening light. She did not run. She did not scream. She sat down on the curb, put her hands on her knees, and tried to breathe. Sung-min arrived before the police did. Min-ho drove. They covered the distance from Bel Air to Santa Monica in 14 minutes, which should have taken 30. When Sung-min got out of the car and saw the SUV, saw the message, saw the glass, and then saw Regina sitting on the curb with her hands trembling, something inside him changed permanently. He did not yell. He did not make threats. He went quiet. His face became still. His eyes became flat. And everyone who worked for him knew that when Sung-min Park went quiet like that, the situation had passed the point of negotiation. He walked over to Regina and kneeled down in front of her on the curb. Right there, in the parking lot, in front of his security team, in front of the gathering crowd of clinic staff and passersby, the most powerful man in the Park Empire kneeled on the asphalt and put his arms around her. She let him. She pressed her face into his chest and she held on. She could feel his heartbeat against her cheek, steady and strong, the same heartbeat she had monitored on the side of a highway weeks ago. He held her until the shaking stopped. That night, back at the estate, Regina sat on the edge of her bed and looked at the wall and tried to figure out what her life had become. Sung-min knocked on her door. She let him in. She said, "I don't want to be a weakness for you. I don't want to be the thing your enemies use to get to you." He said nothing. She said, "Maybe I should disappear again, like I did that night. Maybe that is the safest thing for both of us." He sat down next to her. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You disappeared once. I spent everything I had to find you. If you disappear again, I will spend everything again, and again, every single time. Do you understand me? Every time." She looked at him. His eyes were completely serious. There was no negotiation in them, no flexibility, just a statement of fact as clear and absolute as gravity. She stayed. Over the next 2 weeks, Sung-min and Hana built their plan. They were going to take down Victor Hale, but they were going to do it the Park family way, not with violence, not with threats, with strategy, with precision, with evidence so overwhelming and public that Victor would never recover. Hana had been compiling a case, wire transfers, phone records, Eric Soren's military background and his connection to Hale's shell companies, security footage from the parking lot attack, the photograph left in Regina's apartment, every piece of evidence legally obtained and meticulously documented. But they needed one more thing. They needed Victor to incriminate himself directly. Sung-min arranged a high-profile business summit at the Park conglomerate's newest luxury hotel property in Scottsdale, Arizona. He invited every major real estate player, investor, and financial media outlet on the West Coast. He framed it as a collaboration initiative, a signal that the Park family wanted to partner with competitors rather than fight them. He invited Victor Hale personally, a handwritten invitation on Park conglomerate letterhead. Victor accepted. Of course he did. He was arrogant. He believed Sung-min was weakened by the crash, distracted by the mystery woman, and ready to be outmaneuvered. He saw the summit as an opportunity to position himself as the dominant force in West Coast real estate. He did not see the trap. The summit was held at the Park Scottsdale Resort, a $300 million property that had opened 6 months earlier. It was stunning. Desert modern architecture, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Red Rock landscape, event spaces that had already hosted 2 presidential fundraisers and a royal wedding. 300 guests attended, industry leaders, investors, media, the who's who of American luxury real estate. And Regina. She did not want to be sidelined. She told Sung-min she had been part of this since the night she pulled him out of that wreck. She was not going to sit in Bel Air while the situation got resolved without her. Sung-min resisted. He wanted her safe, and safe meant far away from Victor Hale. Hana sided with Regina. She said, "She is tougher than half your security team. Let her be there." Sung-min looked at both of them and realized he was outnumbered by two women who were each individually more stubborn than he was. Regina attended the summit. Hana took her shopping the day before. It was the first time in Regina's life that she had tried on clothes that cost more than her monthly rent. Hana picked out a dress for her, deep emerald green, fitted, elegant without being overdone. When Hana showed it to her, Regina said, "I cannot afford this." Hana said, "It is a gift, and if you argue with me, I will buy you 5 more. The evening of the main gala event, Regina walked into the ballroom of the Scottsdale Resort and conversations slowed. She was not trying to make an entrance. She was not performing. She was just walking, in a green dress with her locks down past her shoulders for the first time since she had arrived at the estate, looking like someone who had decided to stop being invisible. Sung-min was across the room in conversation with 2 investors from New York. He turned when the energy in the room shifted. He saw her. For 2 full seconds, the CEO of the park conglomerate did not move, did not speak, did not blink. He just looked at her. Then he crossed the room. The summit sessions ran for 2 days. During that time, Hana engineered a private meeting between Sung-min and Victor Hale, just the 2 of them in a conference room on the resort's top floor. Sung-min played his part perfectly. He was calm, measured, accommodating. He discussed a potential joint venture on a property development in Newport Beach. He asked Victor's opinion on market trends. He treated Victor like an equal, which was something Victor's ego desperately craved. Victor relaxed. He got comfortable. He started talking. He referenced properties that he should not have known were available, properties that had only become available after the park conglomerate's stock dipped following Sung-min's crash. He mentioned timelines that matched the period of instability perfectly. He hinted at having advanced knowledge of market shifts. Meanwhile, Hana had obtained a court order based on the compiled evidence. Recording devices were placed in the conference room under full legal authorization. Everything Victor said was being captured. Then Victor made his fatal mistake. He mentioned Eric Soren by name, not directly, not as a confession, but in the context of reliable operators who could clear obstacles in the development world. He said, "Sometimes the road to a good deal has a few bumps in it, doesn't it, Sung-min?" And he smiled. Sung-min did not react. He smiled back. He shook Victor's hand. He walked out of the conference room, went directly to Hana and said, "We have everything." That night, after the summit sessions ended, Regina was alone in her hotel suite. She had changed out of the dress and was in sweats, sitting on the bed with Lucky, who Sung-min had insisted on bringing to Scottsdale because the dog had separation anxiety. Her phone buzzed with a text from Joel that said, "Send me pics of the hotel room or I will never forgive you." There was a knock on the door. She assumed it was Sung-min. She opened the door. It was not Sung-min. A man she had never seen before was standing in the hallway. He was tall, lean, with close-cropped blonde hair and pale blue eyes that looked like they had been emptied of something essential a long time ago. He was wearing a dark jacket and had his hands in his pockets. His expression was calm, almost bored. He said, "Ms. Cole, my name is Eric Soren. Victor Hale would like to make you an offer. You should listen." Regina's first instinct was to slam the door. Her second instinct was to scream. She did neither. She looked at Eric Soren, the man who had sabotaged a car and killed a driver, the man who had stood on a hillside and photographed her saving a stranger's life, the man who had broken into her apartment and rearranged her things to let her know he could reach her any time he wanted, and she did not flinch. She said, "Talk." Eric said Victor Hale was offering $5 million. Cash, untraceable. All she had to do was leave the country, change her name, never contact Sung-min Park or anyone in the Park family again. Disappear permanently the way she had disappeared that night on the highway. She was good at disappearing. All she had to do was do it one more time. Then he added casually, like he was mentioning the weather, that if she declined, things could become difficult for her grandmother. Estelle Cole, 71 years old, lived alone in Inglewood, arthritic hands, no security system. That was the line. Everything in Regina's body went hot, not with fear, with rage, Pure, focused, volcanic rage. This man was standing in front of her, threatening the woman who had raised her. The woman who had worked double shifts as a hospital janitor to keep the lights on. The woman who had braided Regina's hair every Sunday morning and told her she was going to be something. The woman who was everything. Regina said, "You can tell Victor Hale that my grandmother survived Watts. She survived raising me alone after my mother walked out. She survived losing her daughter to the streets and never once felt sorry for herself. She is not afraid of a man in a suit with too much money and not enough spine. And neither am I." She closed the door in his face, hard. Then she locked it. Then she picked up her phone and called Sungmin. He answered immediately. She told him what happened, every word. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. Within 30 minutes, Minho dispatched a full security team to Inglewood to surround Estelle Cole's house. Within an hour, Estelle was on the phone with Regina, irritated about the strange men in suits standing on her front lawn but otherwise fine. Estelle said, "Baby, there are men outside my house who look like Secret Service agents. What did you do?" Regina said, "I'll explain everything, Grandma, just let them stay, please." Estelle said, "They better not step on my roses." Sungmin came to Regina's suite 20 minutes after her call. He brought Minho. He brought Hana. He brought the full weight of the Park family's resolve. He looked at Regina and said, "Are you okay?" She said, "I am angry." He said, "Good, hold on to that." The next morning was the final day of the summit. The ballroom was full. 300 guests, plus press, plus the cameras that Hana had arranged for what was about to happen. Sungmin took the stage. He was wearing a charcoal suit. The scar on his temple was visible. He did not hide it. He stood at the podium, looked out at the room full of the most powerful people in West Coast real estate, and he spoke. He did not raise his voice. He did not rush. He spoke the way he always did, with calm precision, with absolute control, with the quiet authority of a man who had been planning this moment since the second he woke up in that hospital bed. He presented the evidence, all of it. The wire transfers from Victor Hale's shell company to Eric Soren. The phone records placing Soren at the crash site. The forensic analysis of the sabotaged vehicle. The photograph found in Regina's apartment. The surveillance footage of Soren watching the veterinary clinic. The recording from the conference room the previous day, Victor Hale's own voice, referencing Soren by name, referencing clearing obstacles, referencing property opportunities that only existed because of the crash. The room was silent. 300 people and not a single sound except Sungmin's voice. He said, "Victor Hale orchestrated an attempt on my life. He employed a private military contractor to sabotage my vehicle, which resulted in the death of my driver, Mr. Yu, a man who served my family with loyalty for 15 years. He then terrorized an innocent woman whose only involvement in this situation was that she stopped on the side of a road and saved a stranger's life." He paused. He looked at Victor Hale, who was seated in the third row. Victor's face was gray. His hands were gripping the armrests of his chair. Sungmin said, "Every piece of evidence I have presented has been submitted to the FBI and the SEC as of 6 o'clock this morning. This is not an accusation. This is a notification." The room erupted. Voices, phones ringing, chairs scraping as people stood. Victor's lawyers grabbed him by the arms and pulled him toward the exit. Victor was trying to speak, trying to say something, but no words were coming out. He looked like a man who had just watched the ground open beneath his feet. 30 minutes later, Eric Soren was arrested by federal agents in the hotel lobby. He did not resist. He walked out in handcuffs with the same empty expression he had worn when he knocked on Regina's door. 2 hours after that, Victor Hale was arrested at the Scottsdale airport as he attempted to board a private jet. The footage of his arrest, captured by the media that Hana had strategically invited to the summit, was on every news channel by noon. By evening, it was over. Sungmin found Regina on the rooftop terrace of the hotel. She was standing in the Arizona sun, looking out at the desert. The red rock formations glowed in the late light. The sky was enormous. She was crying, not from sadness, not from fear, from relief, weeks of tension. Weeks of looking over her shoulder, weeks of pretending she was fine when she was terrified, all of it coming out at once. Sungmin stood beside her. He did not speak right away. He let the silence exist. He let her feel what she needed to feel. Then he said, "You saved my life on that highway. You changed everything. And I need you to know that I am in love with you. Not because you saved me, because of who you are, every single day. The way you fight for everything. The way you refuse to be anyone other than who you are. The way you held a kitchen knife and sat on your couch all night because you refused to be afraid." Regina wiped her eyes. She turned to him. She said, "I have been in love with you since you walked into my clinic holding that dirty dog wrapped in a jacket that probably cost more than my car." He laughed, that laugh again, the one that changed his face. He kissed her, right there on the rooftop, with the Arizona desert stretching out in every direction and every threat finally, completely, permanently gone. 6 months later, everything was different, and everything that mattered was exactly the same. Regina was enrolled at the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, one of the top veterinary programs in the country. She had applied on her own. She had written her personal statement about the night she watched a neighborhood vet save a stray dog's life in a garage in Inglewood and knew she had found her purpose. She submitted her applications with money she had saved from 6 months of overtime shifts. She earned a full scholarship. When the acceptance email came through on a Tuesday afternoon, she was sitting in the kitchen of the Bel Air estate eating cereal. She stared at her phone for 30 seconds, then burst into tears. She called her grandmother before she called anyone else. Estelle said, "I knew it. I have been knowing it since you were 12 years old and you cried when that dog on the street had a hurt leg. You were always meant for this, baby." Sungmin offered to pay for everything. Tuition, books, housing, all of it. She said no. He was not surprised. She had her own apartment near the UC Davis campus in the Sacramento area. It was small, clean, and hers. She had Biscuit. She had a new cinder block bookshelf that Joel said was a cry for help, but Regina thought was perfectly functional. She had a study schedule that was grueling and a workload that was intense, and she loved every second of it. Sungmin visited on Wednesdays, every Wednesday. His schedule at the park conglomerate was demanding, packed with meetings, negotiations, international calls, and development projects. But somehow, every single Wednesday, his calendar showed a mysterious block of time in the afternoon that Minho could not account for. Sungmin would fly from Los Angeles to Sacramento, drive to Davis, bring her dinner from her favorite Thai restaurant, help her quiz herself on veterinary anatomy, and fall asleep on her couch with Biscuit on his chest. Regina visited the Bel Air estate on weekends when she could, sometimes every weekend, sometimes every other. The estate still felt impossibly large to her, but it had started to feel less like someone else's world and more like a place that had a space for her in it. Lucky the dog was thriving. His leg had healed completely. His fur had grown back, thick and glossy. He had gained 15 pounds of healthy weight and had developed a personal vendetta against the estate's gardener, who he believed was a threat to the property based on absolutely no evidence. Lucky slept on Sungmin's bed every night, which Sungmin pretended to be inconvenienced by, but was clearly pleased about. Hana had started managing an Instagram account for Lucky. It had over 200,000 followers. The account featured pictures of Lucky in various locations around the estate with captions that Hana wrote in a voice that was clearly a more dramatic, more opinionated version of Lucky himself. Joel called it the best content on the internet. Speaking of Joel and Hana had become inseparable. Nobody expected it. Joel was loud, spontaneous, and operated entirely on vibes. Hana was precise, strategic, and operated entirely on data. They should not have gotten along. They were planning a trip to Seoul together. Joel had also started calling herself the unofficial park sister, which she announced during Sunday dinners at the estate that had become a regular occurrence. She posted stories from the estate's pool, the kitchen, the terrace, and once from Sungmin's home office, which earned her a very polite but firm request from Minho to never do that again. Estelle had met Sungmin 3 times. The first time was 3 weeks after the summit in Scottsdale. Sungmin flew to Los Angeles, drove to Inglewood, and stood on the porch of Estelle Cole's small blue house with flowers in his hand. Estelle opened the door, looked him up and down, and said, "Take your shoes off." He did. She led him to her kitchen table, a round wooden table with 4 chairs that did not match, and sat him down. She put a plate of peach cobbler in front of him and a glass of sweet tea. Then she sat across from him and asked him questions for 45 minutes. She asked what his intentions were with her granddaughter. She asked what his family was like. She asked if he could cook. She asked if he went to church. She asked how he treated people who could do nothing for him. She asked what he would do if Regina decided she did not want his lifestyle. He answered every question with yes ma'am and no ma'am. He ate 2 servings of peach cobbler. He washed his own plate. When he left, Estelle stood on the porch and watched the armored SUV pull away. She called Regina and said, "That boy has manners. He can come back." The second time, Sungmin brought Lucky. Estelle was skeptical about dogs in her house. By the end of the visit, Lucky was asleep at her feet and she was sneaking him pieces of ham from her plate. The third time was Christmas. Sungmin, Hana, Joel, and Regina came to Estelle's house for Christmas dinner. The dining room was small. The table was crowded. The food was extraordinary because Estelle Cole had been cooking for 50 years and she did not believe in mediocre meals. Sungmin sat at the table in a sweater that Estelle had given him as an early Christmas gift, a knitted sweater in dark green that she had made herself despite the arthritis in her hands, and he wore it like it was the most valuable thing he owned. Because to him, it was. After dinner, while Joel and Hana argued about something in the living room and Estelle nodded off in her recliner, Sungmin and Regina stepped outside onto the porch. It was cool. The Inglewood street was quiet. Christmas lights from the neighbors flickered in red and gold. Sungmin took a small box from his jacket pocket. Regina's heart stopped. But it was not a ring. Not yet. He knew her well enough to know that she would say yes only when she was ready, and she was not ready yet. She had a degree to finish. She had a career to build. She had a life to live on her own terms first. Inside the box was a key to the Bel Air estate. He said, "This is not me asking you to move in. This is me telling you that wherever you are, whatever you are doing, there is always a door open for you. Always." She held the key in her hand. She looked at him. She said, "You know I am going to make you wait." He said, "I know." She said, "I might make you wait a long time." He said, "I will be here." She kissed him. On the porch of her grandmother's house in Inglewood, with the Christmas lights reflecting in the windows and the sound of Joel and Hana laughing inside, she kissed him and it felt like coming home. Months later, on a Saturday in early spring, Sungmin and Regina drove up Pacific Coast Highway. It was a clear day. The ocean was blue and flat and endless on one side. The California hills rose on the other. Lucky was in the back seat with his head out the window, ears flapping. They passed the spot. The guardrail had been repaired, but if you looked closely, you could see where the metal was newer, shinier than the sections on either side. A small scar on the highway that most people would never notice. Regina noticed. She looked at the guardrail, then she looked at Sungmin. He was already looking at her. She said, "I almost didn't stop that night." He said, "But you did." She said, "Yeah, I did." He reached over and took her hand. She held on. They kept driving. The Pacific Ocean stretched out beside them, bright and open. The road curved ahead, winding along the coast toward whatever was coming next. 2 people who were never supposed to meet, who came from different worlds, who found each other on the worst night of one man's life and the bravest night of one woman's, driving forward together. She had saved his life on the side of a dark highway and disappeared before he could see her face. He had turned his entire world upside down to find her. And when he did, he discovered that the woman who pulled him from the fire was the same one who could finally make him feel safe. Sometimes the person who saves you is not the one you expected. Sometimes they show up in scrubs with blood on their hands and a dented car with a check engine light. Sometimes they pull you from the wreckage and then vanish into the night, not because they do not care, but because they have spent their whole life believing they are not the kind of person anyone searches for. And sometimes, someone searches for them anyway. If this story hit different for you, drop a heart in the comments. And tell me, what was your favorite part? Was it the moment he found her at the clinic? Was it Estelle making him eat peach cobbler? Was it Regina closing the door in Eric Soren's face? Let me know. And if you watched all the way to this point and you are still not subscribed to this channel, I genuinely do not know what to tell you. You watched the whole thing. You are clearly invested. Just hit that subscribe button. I will see you in the next one.